What is a woman, Jojo?
Well, a woman is whatever. If you feel like you're a woman, then you're a woman.
If I feel like a woman right now, I'm a woman?
I feel like you're a woman. It's your identity, sure.
Another day, another unhinged meltdown on live TV. We're going to break down all this and so much more on today's episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast, my daily show where we take on the craziest ideas from across our politics, our media, and the internet, all from an independent perspective. Up first, we got to catch up on the latest crazy, and I mean absolutely crazy segment over on Piers Morgan Uncensored, one of my favorite shows on YouTube where host Piers Morgan has people from truly across the political spectrum on, and they debate the issues of the day, sometimes spiraling into utter absurdity and insanity. Like they did yesterday, when a woman named JoJo from Jurors, who is a progressive influencer, very popular on Twitter and in certain kind of progressive online spaces, was on, and somehow the conversation of identity and feminism and womanhood came up, and she utterly collapsed when asked an extremely basic question by Piers Morgan. Take a listen.
Jojo, I'm going to ask you a question, a simple question.
What are you talking
Give
about?
me a simple answer, Jojo. What is a woman, Jojo?
Well, a woman is whatever. If you feel like you're a woman, then you're a woman. I know I'm a woman. I identify as a woman.
So if I feel like a woman right now, I'm a woman?
I'm not threatened.
Hang on.
What would you feel like?
If you feel like you're a woman, it's your identity, sure.
Seriously? Democrats and progressives still don't have a better answer to this question. That is astounding. I mean, this person, I'm sure, self-identifies as a proud feminist, but cannot give a coherent definition of what a woman is. It's just a sad indictment of the time that we live in and the absolute death grip that gender ideology has on much of the Democratic Party and the left, although not all of it, but a huge swath of it, that they cannot simply say what a woman is. Because her definition is anyone who feels like a woman is a woman. Well, newsflash, babe, that reduces the meaning of womanhood to nothingness. If literally anyone can be a woman simply without changing anything, without having any sort of actual characteristics, simply by feeling as such, then that thing, literally by definition, means nothing. Congratulations. Progressive Democratic feminists have now declared that womanhood is a meaningless concept. What a stunning and bold win for feminism. Is this really necessary? Is there really no way to advocate for dignity and respect and freedom for transgender adults and Americans who just want to live their lives in different ways without this level of delulu? There simply has to be. If you ask me, there has to be a better way. There has to be an alternative. But I have yet to hear anyone ask this extremely basic question come up with a more coherent answer. And unfortunately, this segment only got worse. Take a listen to this next bit.
Hang on, just to be clear.
I'm sorry. What's a man? Piers, what's your definition of a man?
Just to be
I'm a woman.
clear.
What's your definition of a man?
So just to be clear, if I feel like a woman right now, I am a woman. Is that your position?
And if you feel like you are a woman, Piers, and you want to walk around identifying as a woman, it is not my prerogative to tell you that you cannot.
Am I a woman?
I identify as a woman. What is a man, Piers? What is a man?
Oh, a man is
Donald
an
Trump
adult
a man?
Human.
Can I?
That's it.
Piers, can I jump into that question?
Adult human male.
Adult human male.
Adult human male is a man.
An adult human male.
She really thought she ate. She really thought she dropped a gotcha. She really thought, oh, I got him with this. He'll never be able to respond. What is a man? Babe, have you never heard the dictionary definition of a man before? That is not a gotcha question. For anybody with two brain cells left to rub together, it is extremely basic. Just like a woman is an adult human female, a man is an adult human male. And yet she was like stunned by that response. She really thought she had Piers in a trap, in a corner he wasn't going to be able to get out of. And she's still doubling down on this idea that, oh, whatever you say you are is what you are, and it's no skin off my back. Now, I agree that it doesn't directly impact you if somebody believes they are something, but it does have some logical limitations, right? So if somebody feels that they are a cat, They're not a cat. And there are a wide number of issues where this does intersect with people's lives, from changing spaces to bathrooms to sports to medically transitioning minors. Like, it is a real issue. And just to say, oh, it doesn't bother me, it doesn't affect me, is kind of naive and myopic at this point, if you ask me. There are nuanced conversations to be had about all of those issues, but this position, this corner that Democrats have backed themselves into, at least a lot of them have, where I think they're just so genuinely scared of trans activists and saying something that might offend them that they can't even answer basic questions, is not a winning position, love. Nobody's ever, normal everyday Americans outside of your 10-15% base that's diehard woke progressives in this country, nobody's ever going to be on board with that. Y'all make no sense. There's a little bit more of the segment that we can watch, and I'm sorry for inflicting this onto you guys, but I had to see it and suffer through it, so you do as well.
Jojo said if you feel like a woman, you're a woman. So Jojo, final time. If I now say I feel like a woman...
It's not about
No, sorry,
biology,
I'm asking you a
identity.
question. Stop talking. If I now say I feel like a woman, am I a woman?
God.
Am I a woman if I say I
If
feel
you feel
like
like a woman, you're a woman.
Wow.
What does that mean, though? What does that even mean?
Oh my gosh. I love how she's asking him, what does that mean? Babe, that's what we've been asking you. And you don't have an answer. And guys, unfortunately, it's not just that. This isn't just some crazy woman on TikTok or on Twitter, although she's kind of a big influencer over there these days. But the Democratic Party, by and large, with a few exceptions here and there, has gone all in on the self-ID version of gender, where you are whatever you feel like. I mean, they all support legislation, the Equality Act, or they almost all do, in Congress, that would literally redefine biological sex to mean self-ID, whatever you identify as, your gender identity. No like medical transition required, no medical diagnosis required, just anyone can be a woman or a female legally if that's what they feel like. That is not a workable standard. That is not a reasonable position or worldview to hold. And if your argument for acceptance and dignity for trans people is tied to utter incoherent nonsense like that, it's not going to be successful. I don't know how to explain to these people that basic reality they just seem unwilling to grapple with. And instead, they capitulate and melt down like this on television, then have the audacity to play the victim about it, like JoJo did in her follow-up, her podcast that she does. She briefly talked about this, and she accused Piers of being a jerk about it.
So sorry that I'm late, because I was just screaming about it to our favorite insufferable asshole from across the pond.
Oh, Piers
Morgan. Yes, I was up and I watched it, and you'll be surprised to know, ladies, that they don't want to talk about the actual merits of the speech.
No.
Talk about the Democrats' response to it and what a woman is.
Okay. Well, thank you for
Piers, love it when I said, Piers, if you feel like a woman, you're a woman too.
And Piers said, heavens no.
Yeah. Oh, I'm a woman now, am I? So that's where I am late. I'm so sorry.
I love how she called Piers an insufferable a-hole when he did nothing wrong. He asked her a basic question and she kept complaining. I watched the full broadcast with her. It was a real hot mess. I'm only showing you a brief clip because I don't want to subject y'all to all of that, but they did talk about the substance of his speech. And part of the substance of his speech was about trans issues and women's rights and protecting women's sports from male competitors and other things like that. And so to ask her then what a woman is obviously, an antagonistic question. You obviously are trying to do a little bit of a gotcha because you know that the woke people can't answer that question. But like, how crazy is it that they can't answer that question? It's only a gotcha because y'all refused to state an answer. I just don't think it makes Piers a jerk. In fact, she's the one who, frankly, is kind of tough to listen to because she's constantly interrupting everyone and not answering any of the questions. So much so that Piers actually announced she is banned from Piers Morgan Uncensored. A viewer wrote to Piers, I enjoy listening to your panels and the vast differences of the guests. I must say, this woman, referring to JoJo from Jurors, is insufferable, incredibly disrespectful and grating to hear. Please don't invite her back. We want to hear people speak, Even Cenk Uygur has mellowed out and become interesting to listen to. To which Piers replied and said, yes, I agree. @JoJo from Jers is now banned from Piers Uncensored until she learns how to behave like an adult. It's pretty bad when you get banned from Piers Morgan Uncensored because he has crazy guests on all the time. He has people on who are very extreme or very, I think, lowbrow or low-hanging fruit in the way they talk and speak and say all sorts of outrageous and ridiculous things, but you're still that bad. You're on the ban list. That's kind of brutal. But what do you guys make of this segment? Can you believe this is like a real question that has somehow become an issue that stumps some Democrats? I can't, but this is where we're at these days. Truly, everything is broken and upside down, and one by one, these clips are slowly sucking the hope out of my soul. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I do read the comments, and I love to hear what you guys have to say. Do hit that like button, and make sure you're subscribed if you aren't yet. Up next, this Democratic Congresswoman just went on an insane rant on MSNBC. This is Congresswoman Latifah Simon reacting to Trump's big speech. Take a listen.
We're going back to a 1950s America. I want to be very clear about that for those of us who have parents, who have aunts and uncles and communities that are still alive, who remembered what a Jim Crow America looks like. Tonight in the chamber, you can look easily to your right and you can see essentially a monolithic group of folks who look just like one another. And then you went to the left side and you would see what America truly looks like. A beautiful tapestry of all of us who pray differently, who look differently, who come from four corners of the globe to make this country what it is. We know what we all deserve. And I got to say, as a new member of Congress, I was shocked at what seemed like a blatant disrespect for the House. And it wasn't coming from Representative Green. It was coming from the men behind him on the right side who were telling him and yelling, "Sit down." I mean, it felt like I was watching something in a history class of racists yelling at an elderly black man challenging the president of the United States not to cut medical care for the sick. What have we become?
Wow. That is one of the most unhinged rants I've ever heard from a Democrat on television, which is saying something, to be quite clear. Now, guys, please do me a favor. Do not make fun of her looks in the comments. Congresswoman Simon was born legally blind, and when I see people making fun of her, it's always just like, come on, let's talk about the substance of what she has to say. And that substance is batshit insane. You do not have to support Trump. You do not have to agree with everything he says or is doing. But the notion that he is trying to return us to the era of Jim Crow or segregation or the 1950s is absolutely detached from reality. It is not true in any way, shape, or form. He had a multiracial coalition to which he has appointed officials from all walks of life and backgrounds, including a black cabinet member, including 2 Latino cabinet members, a gay cabinet member. Sorry, maybe my history books are wrong. I don't remember that being how the 1950s was. I mean, look at this speech. They literally honored and celebrated a 13-year-old black boy with brain cancer. I must have just missed the part of the Jim Crow era where they did stuff like that. You can disagree with Trump on his immigration, on his policies, on his reversal of DEI stuff, but even that is in many ways trying to return to like an MLK colorblind vision of equality under the law and away from the divisive, toxic, reverse discrimination and identity-obsessed nonsense. But you can disagree with all of that, yet check the unhinged alarmist rhetoric at the door, because it is out of control and is simply ridiculous. And to be pointing to the racial diversity of the Democratic side versus the Republican side, first off, there are some non-white Republicans in Congress and of different backgrounds, but also it's just like a very superficial way. First off, there's a heck of a lot more diversity in that chamber all around than there was in the 1950s. So it's just a divisive way of kind of saying that, oh, because they're not as diverse as a party, they're segregationists. 2 + 2 does not equal 5 there, love. You cannot jump from one observation to the other. And I'm sorry, but the perhaps, I mean, not the most ridiculous part of this, but the second or third most ridiculous part of this is where Congresswoman Simon compares the fact that they ejected Al Green, the Democrat who does happen to be a black man, who got up and disrupted and shouted during Trump's address to Congress. The fact that they ejected him because he violated the rules and was trying to shout down and interrupt a president's speech, she's saying that's like watching people cheer for like violence or discrimination against black people during segregation. What? You think they wouldn't have done the same thing if a white Democrat had gotten up? You can't do that. You can't interrupt and shout down a president's speech. It's a violation of the House rules. It's not free speech. You're trying to stop someone else's speech, and they have every right to escort you out, and they would do the same thing to anybody of any racial background. This is utter, divisive, race-baiting nonsense. And also shame on the MSNBC journalist who's like nodding along and going, yeah, to this absolutely delusional and ridiculous rant. These representatives from the Democratic Party, whether it's Jasmine Crockett, whether it's this woman, are so extreme, and they use the most unhinged rhetoric constantly. And yet these people are like getting more and more attention as rising stars in their party. Do they just want to lose forever? Is that it? Speaking of divisive rhetoric and people who want to lose forever, another interesting little bit here is from Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, who was Kamala Harris's running mate, who referenced the fact that during his speech before Congress, Trump kind of pettily, but also hilariously, called out Elizabeth Warren with his favorite nickname for her, Pocahontas. Because remember, Elizabeth Warren, the senator from my home state of Massachusetts, pretended for many years inaccurately to be Native American. Well, Tim Walz and many others accused Trump of using a racial slur by saying that. Take a listen to this.
The idea of a president standing at that rostrum and throwing a slur at a United States senator in the middle because you disagree on policy is absolutely ridiculous.
Sorry, but calling Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas is not a slur. It's actually funny, and you could say it's kind of a petty insult, but it's not a racial slur, and it's not racist. It's poking fun at somebody who actually did the racism when she pretended falsely for many years to be Native American, even though she or her family were never a member of any tribe. She then released DNA results that showed she might be 1 in 1,000 parts genetically American Indian, which Cherokee leaders spoke out against and said is not even a valid way to prove your ancestry or heritage. She then had to apologize to the Cherokee people for cosplaying their culture. And of course, it's hard to prove this, but this may have been to her personal and professional benefit. She listed herself as Native American on her application to the Texas bar, and then was touted as a professor of color at Harvard. And we all know with the affirmative action stuff how likely it is that being a member of a minority group helps you get ahead. Regardless, the one who did the racially offensive thing here is not President Trump for making a joke about it. Now, you could argue it is beneath the dignity of a congressional speech, a president's congressional speech, to be taking partisan swipes at people. I agree, but it is Trump, so what do you expect? But it is not a racial slur. Y'all sound ridiculous. And if anything, the person who did the racism here is the white lady who cosplayed as Native American for decades and then had to apologize to actual Native Americans. This is the thing. Democrats will never learn. Honestly, at least some of them will never learn to stop frivolously invoking racism and calling people racist. People tune you out at this point because y'all throw that around like candy on Halloween. And then it loses its power to actually push back on stuff that's actually racist and harmful. And that's a real shame. But what do you guys think? Can you believe he said this on TV? What did you think of Congresswoman Simon's remarks as well? Let me know in the comments. Up next, we'll run through some quick hits, some stories that came across my desk that I want to share with you guys. Up first, this insane story of discrimination against an Asian American shows why America is turning against DEI madness. Take a listen to coverage from ABC 7 in California.
You may recall the ABC 7 story that went viral 16 months ago. A Palo Alto teen hired straight out of high school by Google as a PhD-level software engineer, yet he was rejected by most colleges he applied to, including 5 UC campuses, even with a 4.4 GPA and a 1590 out of 1600 on the SATs.
Some of them were certainly expected, Stanford, MIT, it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, for some of them, like Cal Poly, some of the state schools, I really thought, I had a good chance.
His name, Stanley Jong, and he and his father just filed a lawsuit against the University of California and the U.S. Department of Education. The Jongs allege that UC is engaging in racial discrimination in admissions despite the law banning the use of race in the process.
So this is insane. And it's why I get so annoyed when people hit me with the, how could anyone be against DEI? Don't you like diversity and inclusion? Yeah, babe, but that's not the problem. The problem is that in the name of DEI, they've pushed all this toxic, discriminatory, divisive nonsense that, in the case of Asian Americans, literally led to them being systematically discriminated against and punished for their success in higher education admissions, like this young man seemingly was. Now, to be clear, sounds like he's doing better having gotten hired as a PhD level engineer at Google rather than spending all that money to go to one of these colleges, but he should not have been discriminated against if that is what happened, and sure does seem like it. And the fact that these colleges are so blind to merit, they would turn away ultra qualified people because they're Asian American, so they can what? Have more diversity on a brochure? It just shows you it's a microcosm of everything that's gone wrong with DEI and the rise of this kind of left-wing identitarianism in America, and why there is such a real and widespread and by and large well-intentioned backlash to it that is not about being racist or opposing diversity or not wanting people included in society. No, it's exactly about wanting that and wanting equality under the law, wanting America to be a home for everyone where we have a meritocracy, and not wanting disgusting, horrible policies like what happened to this young man and so many others, all in the name of promoting diversity. Up next, this toxic woke journalist just hit a new low. So President Trump honored a young woman at his congressional speech who had been brutally injured as a result of being forced to play against a biologically male competitor in a volleyball match. She suffered lasting brain damage. The Trump White House's rapid response account shared footage of this and said, 19-year-old Peyton McNabb was severely injured by a man during a volleyball game, left with a traumatic brain injury after he spiked the ball against her head. President Trump was proud to sign an executive order to keep men out of women's sports. To which Emma Vigeland, very popular left-wing commentator and YouTube host, wrote, ha 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 ha. What is wrong with her? Maybe you disagree on the trans sports issue, though I think Trump has common sense on his side on that one, but you really are laughing at a girl who suffered a traumatic brain injury? That's demented. Where is your compassion and your empathy? Even if maybe you could even make an argument like, oh, well, this could have happened against a female competitor. People get injured playing sports, but you don't have to laugh at somebody who suffered. This is not a good look. This does not help you beat the unhinged allegations, Emma. To be so glib and so callous about an issue where people have very genuine concerns about safety and fairness is really, really gross. And you can be progressive, you can have a different position on this issue, but you should never, ever let it corrode your soul like this. It's really, really reprehensible. Up next, Trump's Commerce Secretary just said something kind of wild on TV. Take a listen.
Tariffs are going to drive America better. Remember, we pay taxes into the Internal Revenue Service. Wouldn't it be amazing to stop paying taxes to the Internal Revenue Service and have the External Revenue Service of Make America Great Again replace our taxes? That's the goal of Donald Trump, and I think he's going to hit there. He's going to do everything he can to make that happen.
Hey, so this is kind of delusional. Even if you think that the U.S. could feasibly replace its income taxes with tariffs, which there's been analysis of this, the math does not add up. You could simply not raise enough revenue with tariffs to fund our current size of government or even a much smaller one. Back when the US did fund its government with tariffs, the government was like a tiny fraction of the size that it is today. And basically none of the expensive social programs that Trump promises he won't cut existed. But even if you were to somehow replace the traditional system of taxation and the IRS with tariffs and an external revenue service, that is not some like magic utopian discovery that you've hit on, babe, where, oh, well, now we can have our whole government funded and Americans don't have to pay for anything. You know, they have to pay the cost of the tariff, at least a huge part of it. right? When you put tariffs on other countries, what you're actually doing is taxing goods that enter the country. A large percentage of the cost of that gets passed on to the consumer. That is not disputed by any serious economists, even ones that support tariffs. In fact, even the tariff theory behind how they are supposed to work relies on the idea that they will enable higher prices domestically, aka costing consumers money. You can't just fund it externally. And even if you did believe that tariffs are actually all paid by the country that is hit with them, well, guess what? When we put tariffs on other countries, they respond and tariff us too. Canada's already doing that. So even by your own logic, Americans would still have to pay. There is no such thing as a free lunch. And I understand that a lot of Republicans have the hots for tariffs lately, although they're flip-flopping on their position on that they've held for decades. But even if you support them, which I don't gaslight us and try to tell us that we can have everything we need and no one's going to have to pay for it. That's delusional. And it's just bizarre to see the sitting Commerce Secretary of the United States spewing such utter economic illiteracy. Up next, a new woke resistance tactic just dropped. Take a look at this funny video.
Effective form of protest you have right now that you can start immediately? Put a mask back on. Stop letting them observe your face. And have the side benefit of better health and protecting the rest of us in the world. Put a mask back on.
I think I speak for most Americans when I say that we do not particularly care to observe your face or not. And I think we might have slightly different definitions of what the word effective in effective protests means. Because if y'all go and put on your little masks, your little face diapers again as part of a protest, and I'm excluding from this, people with rare autoimmune conditions or compromised immune systems who might actually need to do it for their own health, just the woke virtue signalers who do this, that is not an effective protest, babe, because nobody else is going to be affected or notice besides looking at you a little funny. Like, oh no, how will Trump ever recover that the barista at Starbucks has a cloth face mask on again? I just cannot take these people seriously. But please, knock yourself out. And make sure it's a political mask too. Make sure you put like Kamala or like a rainbow flag or something on it so we know that you're not one of the rare people with an autoimmune condition, that you're just one of the woke virtue signalers. Because then it actually would be useful. Still wouldn't be an effective protest, but it would be useful because then we can know who to stay away from, honestly. But yeah, keep on resisting. You're doing amazing. It's all going great for y'all. Up next, some Democrats don't care about that whole democracy thing anymore, I guess. Take a listen to what Maxine Waters, the Democratic Congresswoman, just said.
And we don't know everything that Elon Musk has done with his high technology ass. Mm-hmm. We don't know what he's been accused of by some as it may relate to the election. But we're not going to give up in investigating.
Yes, this sitting Democratic Congresswoman actually just suggested that Elon Musk may have hacked the last election to rig it for Trump. Babe, you need to touch grass. There is literally no evidence behind this deranged theory. And I, for one, am old enough to remember the years the Democrats spent bleating about how they were the side that believed in democracy and didn't question election results. So much for that, I guess, at least as far as this one congresswoman is concerned. And to be clear, it's actually not just the one congresswoman. At least at the institutional level, the party doesn't really care about these values because they literally funded election-denying Republican candidates in Republican primaries because they thought they'd be easier to beat. That's right, the DCCC, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, funded election-denying Trump Republican candidates to beat moderates because they thought they might have a better chance of beating them in general elections. They don't care about these values. At least some of the people in the political class don't. And I've said for a long time, the Republicans who think the 2020 election was stolen, it's also wrong. There's also not evidence. It's also been debunked and failed every time they tried to prove it in court. People have to stop grasping at straws. Like, sometimes y'all lose, and it's not all a big conspiracy and stolen and rigged, and y'all just increasingly sound delulu. All right, everybody, that'll be it for this episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please do make sure you're subscribed if you aren't yet. Do hit that like button before you go, and do comment with your thoughts. I do read the comments, and I love hearing what you guys have to say. And with that, we'll talk again real soon.